A man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore, observed André Gide. Mid-20th century Swiss psychologist Louis von Franz noticed a worrying trend. Many adults remained psychologically immature, possessing the bodies of adults but not the corresponding mental development. Von Franz saw this issue as so critical that in 1959 she delivered a series of lectures on the psychology of the puer aeternus, or eternal child. Although initially a term from mythology referring to a god who remains forever young, her mentor, Carl Jung, had adapted it for psychological use to describe individuals who, like Peter Pan, do not grow up. In her lectures, von Franz described the puer aeternus as someone who lingers too long in adolescent psychology. Traits normal in a 17 or 18-year-old persist into adulthood, often accompanied by excessive dependence on the mother. Von Franz predicted that in the coming decades, what she termed the problem of the puer aeternus would spread globally and affect more individuals, particularly among the male population in the Western world. Many youths face academic, social, spiritual, economic, and sexual difficulties, living at home into their 20s and 30s, preferring the comforting confines of parental care over the unknown waters of independence. Instead of striving to create something for themselves, many turn to the familiar and comfortable virtual worlds of the internet, pornography, and video games, aimlessly drifting through life without direction or purpose, except the pursuit of momentary pleasure to alleviate their suffering. If you are new here, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Statistics show that only 3% of my audience is subscribed to my channel, so if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Given the scope of this issue, it's not unreasonable to assert that the problem of the puer aeternus is the primary neurosis of the modern era. The purpose of this video is to provide an antidote to those suffering from this problem. We will offer an in-depth psychological analysis of the man-child based on the ideas of Carl Jung, Senkirk, von Franz, and others, and provide practical advice on how to embark on a more responsible, enriching, successful, and, above all, independent life path. Before examining the psychology of the puer aeternus, it's necessary to note the conditions that have given rise to this social problem. For this purpose, we must discuss how a strong maternal complex stunts the maturation of many today. As von Franz points out, a man with a maternal complex will always struggle with tendencies to become a puer aeternus. Throughout our evolutionary history, mothers and fathers have assumed different roles as parents. Mothers have always interacted more with their children, maintaining more physical contact and being more comforting and empathetic with the child's physical and emotional pains and needs. This extremely intimate and close relationship with the maternal figure creates a lasting emotional imprint or a highly resistant psychological bond in the child, which psychologists call the maternal complex. The child's experience of the mother is internalized as a complex, an emotionally charged cluster of energy that eludes the ego's control. Traditionally, fathers have provided resources and protection to the child, but, more importantly, guidance. Specifically, the father's role has been to help the child break free from their dependency on the mother and thus venture into the world as an independent and functional adult. In most cultures throughout history, individuals transitioned from adolescence to adulthood with the help of initiation rites. The primary goal of all initiation rites in all cultures was to separate the young person from their mother, first physically and then psychologically. These rites were carried out shortly after the onset of puberty and were exclusively instituted by the older men of the tribe. Cultural fathers generally forbade women from observing or participating in these rituals. A typical initiation rite, as explained by Mircea Eliade in his book Rites and Symbols of Initiation, proceeded as follows. In the middle of the night, the cultural fathers of the tribe, dressed as gods or demons, snatched the young man from his bed. It was the last time the young man saw his mother, sometimes for months. They took him to a deep cave, buried him alive, or immersed him in some other form of literal or symbolic darkness. This stage represented the symbolic death of the young man's childhood, the loss of paradise, and the joys of irresponsibility. The message was clear: you cannot go back home. After the symbolic death of childhood, a rebirth ceremony was celebrated, marking the young adult's transformation into a more mature state of being. Then, the elders taught him the wisdom and knowledge of the tribe and sent him to the desert, where he spent many months alone, fighting for his survival. Upon his return, he was welcomed into the tribe as an adult member. From that moment on, it was expected that the young man had overcome his complex with his mother, and immaturity and dependency were no longer acceptable. Given the intensity and sometimes violent nature of these initiation processes, it seems our ancestors understood that separating a young man from his mother was a monumental task requiring deliberate measures. Today, in the West, these initiation rites have no equivalent. They simply do not exist. Mircea Eliade has often said that one of the characteristics of the modern world is the disappearance of any significant initiation rite. In the absence of cultural fathers and initiation rites, today's youth must turn to their personal father for initiation into adulthood. Unfortunately, not all fathers can provide this guidance, as a father must be strong, independent, and emotionally present in his son's life. He must be able to demonstrate by example that there is something worth seeking and fighting for in this world, because to successfully encourage a young man to break away from the comforts of childhood, he needs to be convinced that there is somewhere worth going. Sons also need to see their father in the world. They need him to show them how to be in the world, how to work, how to recover from adversity. They need the activation of their inherent masculinity, both through external modeling and direct affirmation. In his book, In Search of Our Fathers, Sam Osherson cites a comprehensive study in which only 17% of American men reported having had a positive relationship with their father during their youth. In most cases, the father was absent physically or emotionally. Reflecting on this statistic, psychotherapist James Hollis writes, "If this astonishing statistic even approaches the truth, something big and tragic has happened to one of the critical balances of nature." The breaking of a critical balance of human nature is precisely what has happened. We live in the age of the absent father, and many suffer greatly for it. Young people are expected to leave the comforts of home, overcome their complex with their mother, and carve out a life worth living, all without the psychological support of a father. It's no wonder that the problem of the man-child holds such a prominent place in our time. But the effects of an absent father are exacerbated by the impact this situation has on the mother. A situation arises where, first, the mother tends to be more involved in parenting to compensate for the lack of a male figure in the child's life. Second, the father's failure to provide love and support to the mother creates an emotional hunger in her that she tries to satisfy through her relationship with her son. This situation creates the perfect storm for the mother to become what Jungians call a devouring mother, overprotecting and smothering her son, and being involved in all aspects of his life. It often happens that such a mother, despite having the best intentions, unconsciously manipulates her son to continue depending on her well into adulthood, and often the child willingly agrees. Consider the secret conspiracy between mother and son, and how each helps the other to betray life. Carl Jung noted, a child raised in this way, and thus never having had the opportunity to venture out on his own, to fend for himself, to fail and correct his own mistakes, or to make decisions for himself, will become an adult incapable of withstanding and overcoming the inevitable challenges and struggles of life. The healthy desire to adapt to reality and to individualize, which involves fear, pain, and conflict, will be replaced by the need to remain bound to his mother, whether his personal mother or a symbolic substitute in the world. If he does not continue to depend on his biological mother, he may desperately seek in other women a substitute to nurture him, or get lost in the comforting embrace of an addiction. In other words, when a child reaches adulthood with a strong maternal complex, he will not seek to develop his independence and evolve his consciousness, but will be possessed by what Jung called the spirit of regression, which threatens us with slavery to the mother and dissolution and extinction in the unconscious. Carl Jung, Symbols of Transformation, found himself at the service of the dream and not in the battle of life. He waits to be caught, sucked, enveloped, and devoured. He seeks, so to speak, the protective, nourishing, and enchanted circle of the mother, the condition of the infant, freed from all care. It is no wonder that the real world disappears from his sight. This extensive analysis offers a profound insight into the modern issue of psychological immaturity in adults and the underlying factors contributing to this widespread phenomenon. Understanding these factors is crucial for addressing and overcoming the challenges posed by the puer aeternus or eternal child syndrome in contemporary society. You have now reached the halfway mark of the video. I congratulate you for trying to become a better version of yourself, and I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write mind over body so I know you reached this far, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Now back to the video. I will tell you a story. One day, a solitary hunter observed a beautiful woman emerging from the deep forest across the river. She waved at him and sang in a sweet melody, beckoning the lonely hunter to come to her as night was falling, expressing her longing for his embrace and the warmth of her nest nearby. Enchanted by her voice, the hunter undressed and swam across the river hurriedly. However, upon reaching the shore, the woman suddenly transformed into an owl and flew into the depths of the forest, mocking him maliciously. In a state of absolute despair, the hunter tried to return across the river to retrieve his clothes and protect himself from the cold. Yet so great was his disillusionment with life that he no longer had the strength to continue and drowned halfway. In the story of the hunter, the owl woman symbolizes the dream of returning to the maternal arms of happiness, comfort, and warmth. Her captivating song promises men an escape from the struggles and difficulties of the real world. But her melodies are actually a deadly trap based on idyllic retrospection bias. The longing to return to a perfect childhood is an illusion that paralyzes men and torments them with apathy until they are finally devoured by the bitter taste of reality. The man-child seeks refuge in the protective, nourishing, and enchanting circle of the mother, pursuing the condition of a child freed from all care and responsibility toward the very society he fears because it demands that he wake up. If a child has not learned from someone capable of facing adversity, setting goals, behaving in public, gaining perspective, and exercising self-control, how can he realize that he must let go of his comforts to become a mature and capable adult? So far, I have limited myself to describing the archetype of the puer aeternus from Carl Jung's point of view, but there is a solution. The first step is the cold awakening. It is common for the eternal child to have numerous identity crises, anguish and depression, but believe it or not, the worst is yet to come. The rupture of the psychological shell. As the years go by, the individual sees that the emotional shell he has built makes less and less sense in practice. The contradictions in the mirror are too evident to ignore. Complaints, cries, and excuses are no longer useful. What happens in the best case? His shell will fall naturally. He will become aware of his reality, force himself to mature, and take action to seek psychological help in any of its forms. Unfortunately, this scenario is not the most common. The worst alternative is that his shell falls slowly and progressively over the years. Years that the eternal child spent fleeing from his responsibilities. This process usually coincides with the onset of anxiety attacks and a depressive state. The encounter with reality is inevitable, and suddenly the patient finds himself empty-handed and with a painful, unfulfilled life, whether with a shattered health, an unbearable work life, an unsatisfactory partner, or, as is often the case, without a partner, job, or health. The second step is fighting for life. Carl Jung explains that the man-child needs to abandon his longing for the past, accept reality as it is and not as he wishes it to be, and fight for an achievable goal that gives meaning to his life. This goal must be important to him and contribute value to society. His self-concept should be that of a hero who bravely ventures into the darkness of the unknown, interpreting his fear as a challenge, as a symbol that he is making his way, not as a sign of weakness. Even more importantly, he must internalize that no one, absolutely no one, not even his mother, will come to save him. Accepting loneliness enables one to learn to stand firm in the face of danger and pursue ever greater autonomy, knowing he is the master of his own destiny. The natural course of human existence demands that the young sacrifice their paternal dependence to free themselves from the bonds of unconscious incest. The eternal child can begin his recovery with a very simple step: work. While it might seem too simplistic, like telling a depressed patient to cheer up, work responsibilities can help the man-child in his independence. The difference is that he will only work if motivated, if his emotion accompanies him. What the eternal child struggles to do is work on a sad, cold, or rainy morning when boring tasks await him, and he must overcome his reluctance. When he doesn't feel like it, he will make all kinds of excuses to avoid his responsibilities and flee. The eternal child who wishes to leave his condition will have to prepare to make sacrifices, set an achievable goal worth fighting for, and fight for it even when unmotivated. When he succeeds, he will realize that he has taken a step out of his prison. His discipline will be rewarded with the right motivation, and this small victory will show him that he is capable of taking on the next challenge, thus initiating a virtuous circle toward his freedom. But first, he will have to make the sacrifice the comfort that numbs him, to go out into the hostile world to fight for a place, sacrifice his childhood to become an adult with responsibilities, and perhaps most importantly, sacrifice his infinite possibilities to choose a single path. The infinite amount of things we could be is a feature of childhood, but if we extend that situation into adult life, we will be paralyzed by fear. As adults, we are aware that we do not know what will become of us if we take one of those paths. However, when we choose one, paradoxically, the options that life gives us do not close, but open up a new world of possibility that we would never be able to reach while we were undecided, delaying our decision. In short, effort and sacrifice cannot be avoided. We can only choose which to take. We must strive and sacrifice comfort to embark on a path worth walking and fight for it, even when not motivated. When we achieve it, we will realize that we have stepped out of our prison. Our discipline will be rewarded with the right motivation, and this small victory will show us that there is material within us capable of tackling the next challenge, thus initiating a virtuous circle towards freedom. But first, we must make the sacrifice the comfort that numbs us to go out into the hostile world and fight for a place, sacrifice our childhood to become an adult with responsibilities, and perhaps most importantly, sacrifice our infinite possibilities to choose a single path. Or, on the contrary, sacrifice our mission in life and enduring the bitterness of an unfulfilled life. Next, I present a fragment from Dr. Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist. He explains it better. In behavioral therapy, one of the things that are constantly done is to help people calibrate their zone of proximal development, a term from Vygotsky. If you are in the zone of proximal development, you are pushing the development of your skills one step forward, a step that you can actually handle. So, if you see people who are completely blocked, you need to find something they can do locally this week. That constitutes at least a micro-victory. When I talk to someone, I say, "Why don't you try cleaning your room because it's a complete and catastrophic nightmare?" It's a good place to start. It often happens with people who are really troubled. Their life is completely chaotic. I have a client. He just had a child and didn't want to mess up this child. But my client still lived at his parents' house. He was about 35 years old. He had a child out of wedlock by accident, but didn't want to be a useless father and was very afraid of being so, for good reasons. He lived in his same high school bedroom, and it was a complete disaster. He lived like a 12-year-old, a bad 12-year-old. So I said, "When was the last time you vacuumed your carpet?" And he said, "Well, sometimes my mother does it, but it's probably been months." I said, "Why don't you bring the vacuum cleaner into the room? Just vacuum your carpet. That will be your task for this week." And I knew it was a bigger task than you might think because he had been in that room for 18 years, and it was a mess. So cleaning the room was a big thing. He told me that he dragged that vacuum cleaner to the door and left it at a 45-degree angle across the door, and then stepped over it all week without using it. That was resistance from a psychoanalytical perspective, because he saw the monster and was paralyzed. So what we did was reduce the task. I said, "Look, you have some drawers in your desk. They're probably a mess. You have a sock drawer, right?" I said, "Clean half of the sock drawer this week. That's all. Just organize it as you see fit. What you have to do is keep reducing the tasks until you reach the threshold for positive forward movement." And the great thing about this is that there is a Pareto principle associated with it, because when you find the point where the person can start, it's not going to be linear progress. It's exponential progress forward. So even if they have to start at a micro level, it really doesn't matter, because the patient gets much better at it very, very, very quickly as they accumulate their successes. If any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.